Thanks for tuning in to the Are You Listening Stand Up Now podcast. Got a great show for you guys today. Something that we're going to talk about is a topic that hits a lot of people. Lack of fathers in the household, or are fathers even present in our life today? Did you know that a stat across America that one in every two marriages ends in divorce? 50% of people that get married in America are going to be divorced. You know what that does for fathers? They say 25% of children do not have a father in their life. As this show has evolved, and talking to my co-host, Bo, you know who he is over there in California. We have learned something about ourselves that we share. My father was not in my life at an early age. I had a stepfather that came in. I finally met my father later on. And Bo, your situation was a little different. Your father left at what age?
I was 16 when it happened. So
16. Yeah. So do you believe that stat that I said about one in every 20, one in four families don't have that dad in their life? That's just crazy to me.
That was a little shocking to me. But I do know the fact that the divorce rate is so high in this country, one in every two people getting divorced. It doesn't surprise me because like that stat, I feel like if you're asking somebody can kind of be spread across the board. It's like, well, is your father involved in your life? Well, once you get divorced and mom gets custody of the kids, the likelihood of your father being really involved in your life decreases dramatically. Then on top, and then so, if you're talking to somebody where the father came in like once every couple of months or maybe like twice a month, but only for weekends, your father's still not in your life very much. So it doesn't surprise me that that's higher than what I expected, but I should have thought.
Yeah, it definitely plays a factor. Like you said, if that parent gets divorced and the child only sees their dad on the weekends or for holidays, then you're right. How much of they actually in their life and how much of an impact are they going to make? I know for me, not having a father in my life played a huge impact in my life, and my life got off track really quick. I would imagine it's the same for you. What would you say the point is where you saw your life like really at the worst part that you could be? Like, how bad did it get by you not having a father in your life?
Oh, what's crazy is like my dad left when I was 16. It didn't get bad right away. It got bad over time. What happened to me is my mom had a stroke. My dad left 2 years later. So when I was 14, my mom kind of didn't become a parent or wasn't a parent. Not that she wasn't a parent. She was always my mother. But I became the caretaker. And my dad, the next 2 years, felt like he was a slave to my mom. He was tired of, shaving the armpits, cooking dinner, cleaning the house. Well, we did the cleaning. But he was sick of that, so he decided to leave and live with who I called my step monster at the time, Susan. And what happened immediately is the parental figures in my house disappeared. And that just gave me the ability to do pretty much whatever I want. So it was it's like compounding interest, It was compounding because I didn't have any parental figure. So all of a sudden it went from me, skipping school to me skipping school and smoking pot to me skipping school, going to parties and doing other drugs. And the bottom for me was I was sitting in my brother Evan's room and we were all smoking Oxycontin pills off foil. You feel like a crackhead. It's absolutely insane. And I always saw it as a bad investment. I never paid for this stuff. So they let me hit it the least, which is fine. But I remember I was sitting there and everyone in the room was falling asleep. My boy, I'm not going to say his name, but my boy, we'll call him Cam. Cam was passing out. My twin brother was passing out. We had another friend in the room who was passing out. And I was just itchy because I didn't do much. And opiates make you itch. So I was just kind of scratching. And I'm like, I have got to get out of here. And I don't remember my exact age, but I was probably 18 already at the time. And I had told myself after I graduated high school, I finished that summer, and I said, I will not be here one more year. We were forced out of the house that I was living in, that I grew up in, forced to move into another house because my dad got that property in the divorce. And I said, I will not be here another year. And that was probably some powerful words that I said to myself. But then at the same time, while I was in this room and we had all just gotten really high and everybody's falling asleep, I go, this isn't where I want to be. I said, I have got to get out of this town. I have got to make something of myself. And that's when I decided to basically get up, get out, and go to college. That's how bad it got for me. I was in a room smoking Oxycontin with all my friends passing out, which, by the way, one of those people that I was with is now gone because he never got over his drug addiction. And I know another one is still addicted to those drugs. That's how powerful they are. And so that's how bad it got for me.
Wow. Wow. Drugs are powerful. They can grab a hold to you. So from 14 to 18 was kind of like a downhill slide for me. First, it was like, hey,
Yep.
this is good. I don't have parental around. I'm doing whatever I want to do. And then it like one thing kind of led to another. And before you know it, you're in this room and you're like, wow, taking a glimpse of what my life could possibly look like. I got to give applause to you to realize that this wasn't what you wanted for yourself, that you're able to look around at your environment and say, you know what? This isn't going to end well. I need to get out of here. I know better than this. And you took steps initiative to do that, because that's a tough thing to do. And a lot of people think their environment is who they are, and you have to make that separation to do something. So I do applaud you for that. But man, that's pretty tough. That's
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's when you lose that parental figure, you realize the world's your oyster. You can do whatever you want with it. And sometimes we don't make the best decisions, especially being kids. We need that guidance. And it's crazy because a lot of people will wonder, it's like, well, was that you or your dad? Well, it's like, probably a little bit of both. I do know when my dad was in the house that I respected his decision. I respected him because he'd punish me if I stepped out of line. But when he was gone, one more little allegory. I was in college. I was in high school. It was my senior year of high school, and I was skipping school. The first 2 weeks of school, I skipped something like 17 classes, and the security guard in my school, Officer Wilson, was like, "What's going on? Why is this kid not in class?" And he called my mom, and my mom at the time, being in a wheelchair, not being able to really discipline us, says, "What do you want me to do?" So he calls my dad. My dad wasn't living with us at the time. He goes, "I don't even live at the house. What do you want me to do?" Didn't have an answer. And from then on, Mr. Wilson didn't care. Once I turned 18 in that November, he goes, "You're 18. You're going to do what you want. I just want to make sure you pass your classes." And I think he kind of understood the home situation. I was also working full time. So, I was skipping first and second period, going to smoke pot in the trailer park with a bunch of my friends rather than going to school because I had to work every day after school. I didn't have a social life. So,
Now, when you were in high school, did you know that's what your dad had told them? You knew that he was like, "What do you want me to do?" Like,
my dad told me that on the call. He's like, "What do you want me to do? I don't even live with him." And my mom told me her version. So I heard both because they're like, "Oh, well, we're going to talk to him," but they couldn't.
How did that make you feel to know that your dad was like throwing his hands up and kind of had like distanced himself and almost like has a new life now, and he's kind of just like, "I don't care enough about you to do something"?
At the time, I got away with whatever I wanted. It didn't really have an effect on me. But then you see yourself smoking Oxycontin in a room and you go, "Oh shit, something bad happened. Something went wrong here. It got bad." So let me ask you the same question. I know that our situation is a little bit different. Your dad left you a little earlier. You had a stepdad come in and, try to be the best dad he could. How bad did it get for you?
Oh, eventually, I was faced in the back of a cop car with, I still remember sitting down that day and I look up and there's lights all around and I just got busted with almost a kilo of cocaine and tons of ecstasy. And I'm going to jail facing 35 years in prison. That was at 19 years old. So, and that was accumulation that had started for a long, long time because I moved out of the house when I was 15 years old, started dabbling in just selling marijuana a little bit, 15, 16, 17, always had a job. But then after 18, I got caught one time at 18 for selling marijuana, went to jail for like 60 days and was like, "Oh, this is all that's happens to you." Made some connections in jail that, step you out to the next thing. And at that time, at that age, people are doing harder drugs and kind of fell into that lifestyle. And I was living for that world. So I was lost, kind of doing my own thing. But yeah, our situation is different because my father left when I was 5 years old. That's when my parents got divorced. I did have a stepdad come in, like you said, at 6 years old. But when my parents got divorced, my dad went away and took my two older brothers. So not only was my dad gone, but my two older brothers who I looked up to as role models were gone. Now, I knew at one point my oldest brother, had gotten in some trouble with the law because he came to stay with us for a few weeks on house arrest because he needed to. And, there was some stuff that happened there. But I think that's one reason why I started idolizing that lifestyle, because I looked up and, hey, that's what my older brother was doing. I should at least be like that, not knowing the full ins about it, and kind of made my own bad decisions. That's what happens. I think when we don't have that strong parental figure in the house, that dad that we can go to, or the dad that'll discipline us or that'll keep us in check, and one that loves us and we know we can confide in, right? Because that's a big part of it. I think sometimes not being able to have that male figure to talk to or to model we're doing what we're seeing in the world and who we're looking up to or what we think we should be doing. And that's what I did.
So when you got busted and you were facing how many years in prison?
35
years. Wow. What was going through your head at that time? Like, wow, I just hit rock bottom. I need to shape up, or were you just kind of
no, it was 35. So since I had gotten in trouble when I was 18, I was still on probation. So there was no bond. I was stuck in the county jail. So I was no bond, 35 years, all that's what I'm facing, 35 years in prison. All the money that I had saved up was going to go straight to a lawyer. And you realize how quickly, I was loving that lifestyle. I was the person, everybody contacted me, everybody wanted to be around me. That quickly fell off the map real quick. And then you have a small handful of people in your life that care. And you're thinking, wow. And you're looking around in the jail, you're facing 35 years in prison. You're going to prison. And like, this is the life I made for myself. And kind of like yourself in that room, I looked around and was like, this isn't the life that I need to have. Like there's more to life than this. I know there is. I might not know what it is at this moment, but this is not it. This is not it. And that was kind of the wake up call for me that I need. I ended up getting sentenced to 5 years in prison over a lengthy battle of some court things back and forth over how they got the charges on me and so forth and so on. But I ended up getting 5 years in prison. And as I went in, a guy told me, you got two choices. Allow this to make you bitter or better. And that's what I did. And that's where I found my faith. That's where I kind of dived in to the Bible and the Word of God. And I realized so many things hit home with me. And that's how I found, my relationship with my Heavenly Father that made a huge impact in my life. And actually, in the time I was in prison, I was able to build a relationship with my real father, who I hadn't seen for 13 years of my life. So both of those things coming together is really what helped me be the person I am today.
Were you mad at your dad when he left and took your brothers? Was there a point at which you're like, wow, that's messed up. I don't like this guy.
I think it was my mom's decision. My mom went to visit a friend. I was with my sister. I was there with my brother. She was going to her friend's house for the weekend. Next thing I know, her friend's daughters come pick me up, get some stuff. And I don't see my brothers or dad other than like one visitation again. I don't see them for a long time. We always moved around a lot when I was with my mom. I think I went to like 5 different elementary schools. Like we moved around a lot. And I found out later.
Elementary schools? Wow.
5 elementary schools. Yeah. I realized
have too.
Well, it did. I was never there long enough to really like make solid friends. I was kind of just there long enough. I was always social, I was always able to meet people, but never enough to find like a concrete thing, so that wasn't just schools. That was schools and towns and houses. It was a lot of that. And I found out later on that a lot of that was my mom moving. So my dad couldn't find us to get the custody because then we got homeschooled. So, it wasn't so much of, I longed for the fact that I needed to know my dad, and my brothers, but I never really harbored any hate towards him. My mother told us some things that, he was bad or he was abusive. I don't ever personally remember those. So there were those things in the back of your head because you really don't know. And you were so young when they got divorced. You're like, did these things happen? And I blocked them out type of deal. But I never really like had anger or hurt towards my dad over that.
That's good. So because I think I've told you this story before where my brother, I dropped him off at the grocery store, sat there and basically told me that, my dad gave us the short end of the stick, and he was very mad at my dad. Resentment had built up. I think they worked through that, but he was pretty upset about it. He thought life was unfair. And I think that's just a piss poor way to look at life. Life is unfair. It's up to you as the individual to overcome and fight adversity. I didn't blame my dad either. And I think that's one of the reasons why our relationship is strong today. There was a long time though, I was mad at my dad. So, he left. He went to live with this horrible person, and she wasn't very friendly to us. And, I would say I had a little bit of a grudge,
I mean, so you had would you say your childhood growing up until 14 was somewhat normal, would you say? I mean, was there love in the household? Was there companionship? I mean, how was your early childhood upbringing before the divorce?
Yeah, it was. I would say I lived in a pretty loving household. My dad was gone for a lot because he owned a business. He was a general contractor doing construction all up and down the East Coast from New York to Florida. So he was gone for a little bit of it. It wasn't like he was absent in my life. I mean, he was home a lot as well. So I don't want to I don't want to say he wasn't there, but it was pretty normal. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and so she had the luxury to do that and take care of the kids. So yeah, it was very normal. I played baseball. I played travel ball. So my mom was driving me all over Virginia to go to games. I would play 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. So yeah, I had a pretty normal life. We had, a membership to the local pool, which was like 10, 15 minutes away. We were Lake Ridge Lancers. So pretty normal life up to that point, which is why when it broke, it was so jarring. Maybe as a kid, it's not as jarring because you don't really know what's going on, but it was jarring. Life changed for me. I became the head of the household. Me and my twin brother, we were taking care of our mom. My dad's not there anymore. We were throwing parties in the basement when she'd go to bed, and we'd invite 20, 30 friends over. We'd be drinking until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, be hungover the next day. Mom's like, what happened last night? It seemed like there was a lot of noise. And we lived on a 5-acre land, so why was there noise? It's like, so I lived on a big property. It was pretty normal. Which I think is why it was so jarring. Like I said, when he left and I just had no supervision, it was a wild couple of years.
It sounds like you had some crazy times. So, I mean, when he left, like you said, it was the lack of parental advice over you that you basically where you're at. But if you felt like you needed to call your dad, could you know that you, like, deep down, you could always pick up that phone and call your dad? Or even in that instance, you didn't want to? Or was it the fact that your dad was too busy with his new life to care?
Great question. I think a couple of things there. I think I could pick up the phone and call my dad. I think I looked at it as he left me. And I go, why should I call him?
Gotcha.
I also wasn't given a cell phone until he left the house. Then my mom got his cell phones. So I wasn't used to picking up the phone and calling my parents because we didn't have phones.
It was a different time back then. It wasn't like that was the thing that you were going to do. But I just found that to be interesting. I'm glad that you shared that, because how many people today, maybe that are watching, that don't have that father they could call, right? That not even there. That's kind of how it was for me. And that's why I really wanted to ask that question. Cause, for 13 years, I remember at one point, saying, like, I wonder if my dad was standing behind me in the gas station, if I would know that was my dad, right? Because at that time it had been 10 years since I had seen him. I had vague memories of what he looked like. I knew he had glasses, knew he had blonde hair. Was he short? Was it long? Was he tall? I really wasn't 100% sure. And often my brothers too, because I saw them when they were 6 and 8 years old, at that time. So, would I recognize them if I saw them? So that's why I asked the question.
I remember I was longboarding one time. I don't know if you've ever longboarded before, but I was going down this big hill. They call it bombing when you're not weaving or anything. I was down on the board. I fell off probably going about 40, 45 miles an hour. I had scraped up my arm here, and I was going to the hospital. And I call my dad. I think I'm 19 at this time. And I go, hey, I need the health insurance card number. Because at 19, you're still on your parents' card and everything else. I'm about to sneeze. Fought that one off. I call him and he goes, you don't call me. And I go, and that really pissed me off because he didn't call me either. I go, no, you don't call me. Mm. And I think I struck a nerve because he realized then that I think it was his responsibility, because I followed it up with this. I go, you don't call me. You left us. And I think that actually was the catalyst that changed mine and my dad's relationship. This is 3 years after he left. This is a couple months before I go to college. It changed. That was the pivotal moment that I think my dad was like, okay, I want to be involved in my son's life. And it changed for the better because of that. So me calling my dad out on his BS, I think he realized, oh, okay, I'm not talking to a child anymore. I'm talking to a young adult that understands a little bit more about the world. You left me. It helps.
Sometimes brutal honesty is sometimes what it needs. And like you said, it takes that, hey, wow, they're not a kid anymore. And that level of respect changes. That's kind of how with me and my dad, when he came into my life once I was incarcerated, and we mainly gained our relationship through writing letters. He would come visit once a year. But I realized that he didn't hold that against me. My mistakes, he didn't hold them against me, which I valued greatly. He wanted to know who I was as a person, and I wanted to know who he was. And when we didn't harbor that anger and we could look at each other like men, that was where our relationship grew. And it's so good today because and today my relationship with my father is amazing. You know, we talk once or twice a week, talk to him more than any other person in my family, actually, other than my wife. But, you know, as you know, not living in my household, and it's a great thing. And then what that does for you, as a man and as a father now, as I have two children, I know that what I went through has shaped me to be a better father for them. So do you think, I know you haven't had kids yet, but how much of your childhood has that put a stamp on you where you're like, I know what I'm going to do, what not I'm going to do is, you know, when I have kids?
For sure. Yeah. I feel like it was a guide. It was a weird way to give me guidelines, you know? It's a great way to look and go, I don't want to do that. I won't do that. I will take some of that. You know, it's like you pick the good, don't do the bad. It's definitely a great guideline to follow. But I can't imagine what you went through because I feel like there was a lot of, you know, it was hard for me because my mom, as much as she didn't like my dad and what he was doing, she didn't lie to me about what my dad was. She didn't move me around a lot because trying to avoid my dad. One, she needed my dad because she was, you know, wheelchair bound. I can't imagine what you went through. It seemed like there was a lot of deception about your father and you were lied to about him. How was that when that was revealed to you? Did it change things for you? How did that shape your life?
Well, you know, what it's done is for a while, it harbored a lot of resentment towards my mother is what it did. You know, like I said, our relationship, I moved out when I was 15 years old. So there was always some things at home that I wasn't happy with, that I saw the environment wasn't the best. But then as I did later down the road, meet my father and find out those things to be not 100% true, then it makes me say, well, wow, why did she really do this? You know, and for a long time, I harbored a lot of resentment and anger towards her. And once again, it was in my faith and the forgiveness that I realized that I'm a sinner and I've made a whole bunch of mistakes. And who am I to think that anybody else is greater than I or less than I, that I was able to forgive my mother for those things and to kind of put that aside. Now, even to this day, we don't have a close relationship. There's some mental health pieces and she chooses to do things, you know, a certain way and I do mine another way, but it definitely played an impact in me. And that's what led me to, you know, going in the road that I did, you know, is using drugs, using marijuana at a young age to begin selling them, to begin, you know, dabbling in harder drugs, using those, selling those. So all of that played an impact in my drug use and those years leading up to my arrest for sure.
Let me ask you this. If your father stayed in your life, if he was there in the house the whole time you grew up, do you think you would have sold drugs or moved out?
You know, it's hard to say, right? Hindsight, it's really hard to gauge on that. I do know that my two older brothers that live with my dad, who my dad also got remarried, you know, fairly early on too. My oldest brother made a lot of bad decisions. You know, he actually went to prison as well. My middle brother, yeah, he did.
For what?
My middle, stupid stuff, not selling drugs, stupid stuff. You know, I don't know if it was fighting or
prison
stealing.
For fighting?
He's done a few things. He actually went twice. He had, once he got out again, later on when he did well, he bought a firearm and owned a firearm when you weren't allowed to have one and then went back to prison for that. Like, just
you weren't supposed to share this. We were trying to prove that fatherhood helps. I'm just kidding.
No. So that's the thing. So there's the single parent thing.
Yeah.
Right. And how much of that parent, either if the father's there, was he involved father? Because your father was around for 14 years. You know, but it was when he realized that, wow, I can do whatever I want to do. That's where you went. And I think that's how it was with my brother, because my dad was working. They lived on Panama City Beach in the 90s. MTV was there for spring break all the time. They lived like, later I found out they were like 2 streets away from Front Beach Road in Panama City. Wow. So it was wild in time now, you know, so my brother was around that at a young age. So he just dove into that environment and just was living a lot older than what he was supposed to be, similar to what I was doing, you know, in my lifestyle, just because you knew that, hey, somebody wasn't around. Maybe they were busy. They didn't care enough, whatever it was. And they were making those bad decisions. So I do think having that strong father in the household or strong parent that's stepping into that role is making a decision. but it's also, we have to take ownership and say, we make a lot of bad mistakes when we're left on our own accord because we don't know any better. Right. Yep. And we want to just do what the world's telling us to do, whatever our emotion is. And that's where the key of having that strong father that we can go to and share stuff. Because I know just having my mother in the house, even when we did have a close relationship earlier on, I didn't feel comfortable enough going to her with certain things. Wasn't a thing. Would I have felt differently had my father been around? I don't know. I think I would have. I know that I'm working now with my daughters to grow that close bond at their early ages. The age they're at now is the age that my parents got divorced. And I remember looking back how I would like not have anybody to go to. So I'm really working on letting my kids know they can always come to me and just talking and, sharing with them and strengthening them. And I could see their bond growing closer to me. So I that's all I can do is look at where I'm at now and what I didn't have then.
Was your dad, your biological dad at the time, not involved in the household, even when he had gotten remarried and was living with your brothers?
I think he was working a lot is what I was told. And I, once again, new stepmom in the household, right? They're probably doing certain things, right? They're not as focused on the kids from before, because that's kind of how it was with my mom and my stepdad. They instantly got together, started having more kids, probably had good intentions, but hey, life gets busy. You have new kids that are yours. Maybe you don't know how to connect to the younger kids that aren't yours as well. Doesn't mean you didn't try, but there probably were things that you fell short on. And it plays an impact on that child. So, and if you're not going to that child and that child's not able to share with you about that, how can it be corrected?
I also think another thing that we need to talk about is like, you can have a father in the home and he's not a good dad, and I'm not saying that either one for us was that way. I knew though, if my dad was coming home, my mom would be like, your father's on your way home from work, straighten up the house. Me and my brothers would look at each other and then scram. We'd grab our shoes because we'd throw crap all over the place. We'd grab our shoes, put them where they're supposed to be. We'd straighten up the house. So my dad came home and he didn't walk in the house and go, "Why is this house a mess?" And he did it, I feel like, for two reasons. I'm sure it annoyed him a little bit if the house looked like crap when he got home from work. Nobody wants to live in a pigsty.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing was to drive home the idea, pick up after yourselves. Be a good housemate. Be a good roommate, And I know living in the same room with my twin brother that I wasn't that good of a roommate because we lived in the same room. My side of the street or my side of the room would be a little bit dirtier than his. Evan's would be immaculate. Evan had like a little bit of OCD, perfectly cleaned up, like everything was all put away. Me, I'd have some clothes by the hamper, maybe not in it. Maybe I wanted to wear those jeans again tomorrow, that kind of thing. And that frustrated him a little bit. I'm not a dirty person at all, but I think that was interesting. So we knew if my dad was coming home, we had to straighten up, back straight, get all the stuff put away, be presentable. Was that similar to how your household was, or your father or stepfather ran the house?
So, that's a little bit out of respect that you did that. Right. So that was respect that you had for your father, that you guys wanted to do that. Respect or fear.
There we go. Or that we get our little tushies punished if we didn't do it. Yeah. So,
but look at the impact that played on you now. I'm sure your house is that way now. Right. So that was, even though it was done with fear, it was done for betterment. So, going into how it was with ours. I've always been kind of a neat person. My mother, our house was kind of chaotic. There was a lot of kids. My mom had an infatuation with rescuing animals and the Humane Society and just too many animals that should be allowed in the house. There was one point in our life where police came over and they saw how many there were and they took all the animals, and we went to a foster family for a few weeks to get everything in order. Like, it wasn't good, Wow. So it wasn't in that order. And the thing is, like, my stepfather allowed that to go on. And I was like, how could any person allow this? Like, if your spouse, you know what's right and what's wrong, like if your spouse has infatuation or maybe there's a mental thing, whatever it might be, you got to be like, this is not right. So did he step up as a man and take control of the household? No, for sure he didn't. He was not the man of the household. And that's something that I could say confident. Now, he had respect for my mom. He did teach us manners very much. We would eat dinner at the dinner table. We couldn't pick up our fork before she took a bite. All of that was in the household. And I thank him for that, because my manners, my respect comes there. But he was not a true leader as a man should be in the household. And I'm not saying that men need to be overbearing on their wife or anything like that. No, but you need to have order in your household. And through that respect, your wife gives that respect and is a companion with you. And you guys are in unison together. That's what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
and making sure things are always provided for. That's where I felt like there was lacking in mine.
I also think you brought up a good point, family dinner. Up until the time my dad left, we did have family dinners. We would, every night around 6, 7 o'clock, my mom would have dinner ready. We'd all sit down at the table. When my mom was like, your father's coming home, she would have dinner ready in about the 30 minutes that he got home. So I think family dinners are important for kids because at that point you can ask your kids, what'd you learn in school today? And I have often said the most important question you can ask your kids in 2024 is, what did you learn in school today? Because what they're teaching is absolutely insane. So it's great to stay involved in your kids' lives, right? If they've got a bully, they're going to tell you about it at dinner. If they learn something cool, they're going to tell you about it at dinner. I think it's so important to have family dinners. And I feel very grateful for having the opportunity to have that for the first, 14 years of my life.
Yeah, no, I agree. Family dinners are extremely important. I remember looking back that was something that we did have, and I have something that we do now in my house with my daughters. And it's funny you say about, what you do in school today with your kids. I'll tell you what, when you have kids and you pick them up from school, if you ask them that question right from the start, and any parent that's watching, you know exactly what I mean. When you ask them, they're like, good. What'd you learn? I don't know. Because their brains are just so overwhelmed throughout the day. I mean, there's so many things that went on. But if you let that sit in their mind, right? And then you ask them later on in dinner, then you say, hey, what'd you do at school today? Then they want to share. They want to tell you what their friend did. They want to tell you about this funny moment. They're going to tell you what the teacher did. But when you ask them, when you first pick them up from school, they're just like, I don't know. And I always say, you don't know what you did all day and you've been there for that many hours. Like, no, because their brains are just so overwhelmed processing that information. So it's almost better to let it process and then have that. And this is why family dinner is so important. Sit down at that time when their brains are settled. You're eating together. We always pray together now. We're a meal or something. And we go around and let the girls pray too. So we want them to feel comfortable in that, so that's the key. But, having that time to just share what they did and have that conversation is so pivotal in a child's growing and for your parent, as a parent, to grow closer to your child.
That's awesome. The reason I can relate to that, and maybe I thought it was a guy thing for the longest time, because, I'll come home from work and my lady will ask me, hey, how was work? And I go, it was work. It was it, and I haven't had time to sit down, decompress. And last night she asked me 3 times and I'm like, why did you just ask me 3 times? And she's like, because you didn't tell me the first 2. And I was like, okay, now I have to actually sit down and think about this. And I'm like, what is something I wanted to tell her? And then I told her, because there was something that came up at work yesterday. I was like, I do want to share that with Emily. But that's so funny you said that, because I think that is such a good point. And I've noticed it happening in my own life.
See, you're just a big kid at heart. You're just a big kid at heart.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. Aren't we all,
For sure. Sure. So, hey, I got a question for you. This is something I want to hit you with. So your dad goes on when you're 14. Was he your role model up until 14? I know you were involved with baseball. Did you have somebody else other than your father that maybe because your father's working a lot that was that male role model in your life? Or was your dad always the one? Or even after he was gone, was there somebody else that stepped in? Or did you not have anybody?
I think it was a combination of a couple things. I played baseball. A couple of the pro baseball players back in the day. I remember Mark McGwire was the one hitting home runs. He was definitely a role model. So I want to be like Mark McGwire, just hit grand slams, My dad for sure was a big role model. But I think most of all, who was a big role model was my brother Brandon. He was about 8 years older than me. He was a big football player. And I just always looked up to him as he was super smart, went to Cornell, brilliant guy. I always looked up to him, and I think he was my biggest role model. We would kind of share stories about, girls, and I remember we'd be up late in my bedroom, and we'd be asking each other questions. He'd be teaching me about atoms and science, and I can't remember what it was, but we were talking about credit card debt back in the day, and I had raised a question to him, and he was like, "That's one of the best questions you had ever asked." I can't remember what the question was. I don't even think he remembers anymore. But I think he was my biggest role model, which is why when the pandemic happened, that it crushed my spirits, because then you realize you're on par with these people, right? He was 8 years my senior, thought he was smart and brilliant. And then here he is getting triple vaccinated. And I'm like, oh my God, Brandon, what are you doing?
So do you guys have a close relationship now, or was decisions over the last few years distance you guys at all?
We still have a close relationship. I mean, I talk to him a couple times a year. It's not like we're calling each other every month, but we try to cross paths once a year. He's in Boston. I'm out in LA. So quite a distance between us, but, we do try to cross paths. And when we do, we're always cordial, good friends. And, regardless of our differences, he considers himself a Republican, but I don't think he is. He thinks Trump's a narcissist. Yeah. I'm like, you're not a Republican, dude. You're triple vaccinated. So it's fun. We can make fun of each other and laugh about it. That's the best thing. And that's what you're supposed to be able to do with friends.
You should have to do that with everybody and everything. It's so funny. Since we're on this, a buddy of mine texted me the other day because he's in the market for a new vehicle, and I've been in that industry for a while. And he was like, hey, I was kind of telling the prices, and he was like, wow, that's crazy. I said, yeah, man, interest rates are really high. Just the rate from the Fed is 3 times the amount it was, 3-4 years ago. And then I sent him a meme of like Biden, like, hey, there you go. Cause he voted for Biden. He's always been like a never Trumper. And, he told me, he was like, yeah, that was a mistake. Definitely voting Trump this go around.
Nice.
So,
I think a lot of people are in that boat. They're like, shit, what did I just do?
Yeah. Talking about fathers, that's somebody we can bring up as an example. Don't personally know him, but you can look at somebody and his relationship with all his children and how all those children are behaving and what they're doing today. And even though there were divorces in their life and different mothers, you can tell they are all close. And that had to be something that both the mother and the father decided to do together, but the father putting that time in to spend with his children. And then once they got old enough, trusting them and knowing they're trusted by their father and putting them in roles and positions for success. And you can see that in their family. My wife, her dad present in her life, they come both family, together her whole time at home. Her brother, models her dad. So many similarities, her dad was a strong guy, tough guy, but he always showed love to the children. And you can just see that. So when you have a strong role model, fatherly role model in the household, stepping into that role, I definitely believe there's more success rate for those children being successful, as they grow up. I do think so. And those are 2 examples.
It's fun. Yeah. Every situation is different. I think Joe Biden's first wife died, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Man, what is going on? I'm about to sneeze again.
Uh-oh.
Joe Biden, though, we know, rode the train into D.C. every day and rode the train back. What does that tell you? He probably wasn't home a lot.
Yeah.
Because imagine how early you got to wake up, ride the train in, do 8 to 10 hours there, then ride the train back. Those are long days. And then on top of that, let's say, listen, trains shut down at a certain time. They stop running. So imagine he has to be in a vote till 10 or 11. I bet you he had a place in D.C. to stay at for the night, just in case. Probably stayed in D.C. a couple nights.
It doesn't mean, so here's the thing. I'm sure that Trump and he had houses all over and hotels all over. But when you're there, no matter how much you have to travel as a dad, because there's a lot of guys out there that, hey, maybe they're athletes. Maybe their just job demands them to travel. But when you're present, are you present? And what are you pouring into your children during that time? And that's the key. I really think that's the key. Because when you're home, hey, are you reading a book? Are you locked in your office? Are you doing work? Or are you spending time letting your children know that, hey, I want to be a part of what you have going on? When my daughter runs in and I'm working on the computer, Daddy, I want to show you something. Do I say, okay, just give me 1 minute, I'll go? Or do I say, no, not right now, I'm busy, go get your mom? What's my response? What am I giving them?
Let's be serious. You're like, go talk to your mom. No,
I really
you say 1 minute, and I bet you're really attentive. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be, because once again, what I went through, and this is the key. I hope that anybody that's watching gathers that no matter what you're going through, know that it is strengthening you for you to make the choice to use that to be a building block for you to be better, to impact somebody's life better than yours that you're going through now. Don't think that this is something that you're settling in, that this is going to be a permanent situation for yourself. And that's what I do. So I say, give me a minute, because for one, I'm trying to teach her something just doesn't come in life when you ask for it, right? It's not your time. It's when the time is right. So I'm trying to teach that lesson as I'm giving her. But then I do get up, take a break, go in there and, see what she's doing, cartwheels or flips or jump roping or whatever it is that she wants to do, a dance competition. I have 2 girls, so it happens like that all the time. But you have to, be present and let them know that you care enough about them and that you want to hear from them. Because if not, then you'll get like you and I were in our adolescent years, where we're like, you know what? You're not calling me. I'm not calling you. I got my own decisions. Versus where they get into that spot and they say, you know what? I'm going to call my dad. I'm going to call my dad.
And you're teaching patience at the same time, which is, a virtue. So, yeah.
Yeah. You have to do that. And I look, like you said earlier, we started talking about, I think it's good to point out that, there are households where there's fathers there, but they're not present, or they're abusive, or even worse. You hear stories all the time of, children get molested by their parents. I mean, there's some bad, just because somebody's a father doesn't mean that they're doing the right things. And they're making the best decisions. That's really where my faith comes in so strong, is that we're all born of our Heavenly Father. And that's the key. And when you can embody that and the spirit that God gives you, that peace, that assurance, and knowing that when you lean into Him, He always provides, He always makes a way. Doesn't mean things are always going to be easy, but that peace that I found in God's word and knowing and believing that has helped me in my life so much. So I would encourage anybody, if you're not sure, you never dove into the word, you haven't read it for yourself, do that and just allow the Spirit to speak to you and see the signs of how God treats His children, because you and I are all one of them.
This is a really good point. There was somebody at the bar last night, for those of you that don't know, I bartend, and she wanted to raise a philosophical question. And I was like, hey, mind if I jump in on that? And she's like, yeah, I just love philosophy. I love talking about ideas and things. And she brought up kind of nature versus nurture. And I can't remember the specific example she brought up, but she was basically saying, like, do we fault the person or do we fault society? And I go, I think you fault both. Like, I think society has this idea where, we can raise people a certain way or do certain things. Society makes general rules. But you can't blame society for all the faults of the individual, because at the end of the day, whether you got a father, don't have a father, whether your father's a good guy or a bad guy, the onus falls on you every time. Your situation is nobody else's fault. And the only person that's going to pull you out of it or put you in it is you. And you have to get up and you have to get out. And one of the best ways to do that is by looking at the guidebook that has helped guide people now for thousands of years. That is the Bible, that lays down a great set of morals and principles for people to follow, for people to look at and, get out of that situation. It was funny because we were talking about it and I had brought up the individual and she kind of blamed society for these things. And then I was like, okay, well, imagine this. Somebody's a murderer, right? This guy murders people. Are we going to blame society for this guy's individual actions? We all have had thoughts in our heads that we want to kill somebody. Somebody stabs us in the back, bad friend, you go, oh, I want to kill that person. But did you act on it? No, that person acted on it. The action is done by the individual. And that is why if you are in a bad situation, you are the only person that can get you out of it. I don't care whether it's depression or whether it's, you're addicted to drugs, whatever it is. But the book is a great guidebook to get you out of those things. There are stories within it that. Do you have a personal story in
Yeah, well, I was just saying, like, to go to what you said, like, so you were in a room at 19 years old doing drugs, and you said, this is not what I want for myself. You looked around, you said, this is not what I want for myself. You made the right decisions, choices, and steps to get yourself out of that.
Well, on top of that, I have a twin brother. It's so weird because he's passed, so I don't know if it's had or has. I had a twin brother.
Share how, unfortunately, how he passed, because I think it plays into the story.
Evan he never broke the cycle of addiction and never got out of it and fell to fentanyl. 2 people, same situation. Dad left us, mom's in a wheelchair, no parental advisory. One person living a completely different life than the other. And, it goes back to that question, nature, nurture, society versus the individual. Look at the difference. The individual choices. You are a culmination of your individual choices. Not anybody else's. You're a culmination of your individual choices along with society. But you're the person that's going to change it. And that's why looking at the book is a great way of, living your life. It's a great guidebook. So
For sure. Yeah. It's a mindset that you take from it. Do you look at it? Do you go in and you read the word open and seeing those stories of how God used people that made lots of mistakes, right? And built them up out of that environment and prepared them for something better because he had called them for something better when they didn't even realize it. They didn't even know what they were called to do do I take this mindset like, oh, I'm less than because I've made these decisions. I was born in this environment or born into poverty or my great grandfather was this person that did these bad things or my dad was this bad person. It doesn't matter because when God's called you and anointed you for something, your path is going to go. You have to make those choices. You have to go the right way because if you don't, that's your choice. That's your option. But you definitely have the choice to make the right mindset and decisions of how to prepare your life. And it's the things that you say that you want for your life. I do believe in the power of spoken word. I believe in envisioning it. When you went out to Hollywood, you said, hey, I want to start acting. There were steps or there were thoughts that you probably laid out that this is what you wanted to do. I remember as a younger child, I would look at people that I thought was like normal or successful. And I said, that's what I want. That's the kind of life that I want as a future. And I believe as I took that in, it came, I do believe in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a scripture or a favorite part of the Bible that you would lean on for, somebody that is more focused on the individual than, is there something there? And the reason I'm asking Gerard is because I am not an expert.
No. I really didn't think about this, but like I said, my favorite verse, and I know I've said it before, but my favorite one is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Acknowledge him in all your ways and he will direct your paths. So I just look at that and say, I've made mistakes. When I go the way that I'm supposed to go, I make bad decisions. Bad things happen. I live for the world. But when I trust in God and I put my energy in him, he will lead me the way I'm supposed to go. So that's kind of a model that I live by, that I see, and I know the world would be so much better today if people did. And then you see so many people just totally against it, right? And they're like, want to hang on to certain things, like right now you had Louisiana where now they're sharing, where they're bringing back the Bible or the 10 Commandments in school and the Bible in classrooms. People are like, oh, separation of church and state. But they don't even know where that phrase even comes from. Do you know where the separation of church and state comes from?
Does it come from the Bible?
No. So separation of church and state was in one letter that was written to a Baptist. It was Danbury Baptist coalition. And I believe it was Thomas Jefferson that wrote this letter. And he was writing to them saying that, don't worry, America will not pick one religion and this will be the forced religion upon everybody. But that doesn't mean that our foundations weren't built on the Bible. That doesn't mean that they're not going to. Matter of fact, he was one of the ones that set up the schools that had them praying, that had the 10 Commandments. So the same guy that put all those things in the school is the same person they hold on to that says, oh, separation of church and state. But it means nothing about what they want it to mean today. And that's what we were talking about earlier with words and definitions and meanings.
Yep.
How many times do things get changed along the way that don't even mean anything of what they started with? Think about the telephone game when we were kids, right? One starts over here. By the time it gets over there, it's completely different. And that's kind of the separation of church and state that's happened in America because people are so disconnected of the actual facts of American history and where that goes. As we're ending this, I talk about this because it's the founding fathers and I believe in the power of word. So I believe the same way we should honor our birth father, we should honor our heavenly father and also our founding fathers. There's a reason why they were given those names as father. And I do believe that there's honoring them in all three is what we're called to do. And if we were to do that, if Americans were to do that, men were to do that, women were to do that, honor those three fathers, America would be unstoppable.
I think one of my favorite questions to ask people is where do we get our rights from? And you already know the answer. Our founding fathers said we get the rights from God. Yeah. We don't get them from government. And I think that's a founding principle to really tell people that our rights and our governmental structure comes from the Judeo-Christian values, regardless of the idea of state and religion, right? Being separate.
Yeah.
Regardless of that, our values come from Judeo-Christianity. And it's a great way to remind people exactly what we're built upon.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And it's Judeo-Christian, right? It's not just Christian, it's Judeo-Christian. That's how America was designed, was the foundation in the New Testament used as a building block? For sure. But was it the Old Testament morals that were used? Is it saying that we're going to only allow this one? No, that's not what it's designed at all. But it also means that we're not going to back down from what America was founded on. Our belief system is founded on, and it should be rooted as a foundation, like it says in the Word of God. When you're built on a solid foundation, you can't be swayed by the storm. But as soon as they remove the Bible, remove the Word of God, something comes in and you're deceived and you're going to crumble. And that's really a key that we are losing sight on. And that's another part of being a good father, I believe. I'll tell you what, in the last 2 years that I really have, I started with a prayer that I prayed to God to make me the best father, leader, and husband that I could be. I prayed that prayer about 2.5 years ago as I realized that God had given me everything I had ever asked for in my life. He had given to me. Something I had wrote down and did when I was in prison. I had realized, wow, I've gotten everything he's asked for me, but I never asked for more. I prayed that prayer. And over the last 2.5 years, my relationship with my wife has gotten better. I'm a better husband. I'm a way better father. I spend more time with them. I was able to start a apparel brand that was focused on God. That's allowed me to do those things and have more time with them. That I just believe that when we put God first and we bring him into our household as the center and we raise our kids up in that way, they're going to draw closer to us. And I've seen it work true in my life. And I would invite any man, father to do that, is to invite God into your house. You need to go to him first in prayer. Be honest about it, invite him in, and stay diligent at it. And also come together with your wife on that, because when a man and woman come together with God in the middle, they're unstoppable. And that's the key. And that's what they want to destroy in America. And you could see it with everything that's going on.
And, I want to say, if you think the 10 Commandments being in a school is a bad thing, I think that says more about you than it does about God, Christianity, or the people that want those values there. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. You always hear people say, well, what about the people that are Muslim? Why don't you let the people that are Muslim say they don't want the 10 Commandments? I haven't heard it. They don't complain because they live by those same principles and morals too. But it's the people that are non-believers, that are atheists or whatever, that they're the ones saying, well, what about these people? Well, let them speak for themselves. They're actually okay with it.
Also, do you really want that culture here in America? Because let's just say they don't believe in women's rights, nor gay rights, nor trans rights. All of your rights would be gone. So
yeah, when you stop and break it down, it doesn't make sense. But that's usually how that works.
Did you hear about the KFC in Canada?
I did.
They're now going to be serving halal chicken, which people's like healthier, but I don't go to KFC because it's healthy. I mean,
what does that do for the price?
Right. I don't know.
Because I know that kosher food, like South Florida, there's a big Jewish community. So kosher is like, there's, certain Jewish people, they only eat food that's been blessed by a rabbi. That food is like almost twice the size, twice the price of it. So how much is KFC's going to cost? They thought price of a fast food was already going up. Wait till they see that.
Yeah, exactly.
But everybody's going to pay the price for that.
Yeah.
Because that makes
crispy halal chicken. I mean,
I don't.
Is that allowed?
I don't even know. I don't know. It's not a thing here.
We don't get KFC because it's good for you. I get it because the skin is delicious. What I mean?
Exactly. That is a guilty pleasure of mine. I don't eat a lot of fast food, but every now and then, especially after I wasn't not feeling good for a while, and I'm like, oh, I need a good hearty food. I got to get some KFC.
KFC's so good. Mashed potatoes.
It's not good for you. It's not good for you, but it is so good.
But it tastes so good. I remember I got really upset as a kid when my mom was like, no, you're not allowed to have the crispy chicken. I cried in a KFC. I'm like, no, I hate the original. And then I was eating. I was like, it's not that bad.
It's so funny talking about kids and being a father. We were watching the show Young Sheldon with my kids, right? Uh-huh. We watch that with them. They love it. It's a good thing. Well, my daughter we don't eat KFC regularly. I don't order a bucket of chicken and bring it home. They've never seen it. Well, she saw the KFC bucket of chicken on that show. So she was like, Dad, I want KFC. I want a bucket of chicken. Like she just wanted to take a picture with the bucket of chicken because she loved the nostalgia of that show so much. It was so cute. So we got like an 8-piece the other day or whatever. And she was like, a bucket of chicken, and took a picture. but you have to do those things with your kids, right? Like those are the little things I feel like that you need to do. I do think that today a lot of people get so worked up over like, nope, my kid can't have that. Oh, they can't have this. They can't have that. I feel like people are making their kids like these ultra sensitive, like hyper allergic, all type of stuff because of what the parents are putting on them. And I don't think the parents realize that what they're going to end up doing is they're going to be causing like paranoia and fear impacted on their children at a young age. And what is that going to grow into? It's going to grow into people that are forced by society to do something they shouldn't do when the smallest little thing happens because they're scared of the outcome.
Well, it's beautiful. The peanut allergy, what they found out is that it's early exposure is the best. In fact, shielding your kids from peanuts is what causes the allergy. So
it's kind of like what they said that we should do, at the beginning of 2020, right? They're like, hey, everybody should just get together, get sick one time, and then we're good. And they're like, oh, no, don't do that.
Don't do that. Hey, get it in your homes.
Yeah. Don't go outside. Don't go outside. Yeah.
Don't get that vitamin D.
Society will tell you one thing, and you have to make the right decision going forward. So I think we can look at society today with 50% of marriages ending in divorce. 1 in every 4 with no father in the household. And you say, wow, what's the common ground? There's no faith. They've removed God from school. The kids aren't getting anywhere. Parents on themselves are too busy, bogged down, worried about the materialistic things, seeking after those jobs or success. They're not coming together. They're not stepping into those roles. So when you turn to society, what happens to your home? But when you build up a strong foundation in your home, what the outcome of that's going to be. So, I just want to end with that. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I think we had a great show. If you guys liked it, leave us a like, leave us a comment, share it with somebody else. We always end in a prayer, but Bo, did you have something that you wanted to share before we wrapped up?
No, that was it for me. Great show.
Okay. Guys, if you want to support the brand and support the podcast, you can go to standupnowapparel.com. Use the promo code listening. You'll get 20% off your order. Bo's rocking the Flex Your Right shirt. I got the United We Stand shirt. It's got an awesome back design graphic. You can go to that
Show us
website.
that back.
Nah, I'm not going to do that right now. You can go to the website, standupnowapparel.com, and check it out. You're not going to be disappointed. I actually just dropped a brand new design that we're releasing at the Believer Summit with Turning Point USA here in just a few weeks in West Palm Beach. So I'll have my brand new design. It's a play on the Supreme shirt. So check that out at the website. You won't be disappointed in that. It's got an awesome back piece as well.
Hell yeah. Love it.
So we're going to end with a prayer. Thank you everybody for listening. And, this is how we grow, is through each and every listener. We can only do this with you guys and sharing the content. So we appreciate you following along and for sharing this with somebody that you feel could benefit from the conversation that we had today.
So put your hands together.
Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this opportunity to come together to share the common ground that we both have. We pray that our words will be heard by others to inspire them to whatever situation they might be going through or what they have been through, that they could surrender to you and know that a better outcome is there for them. They have to take initiative. They need to turn to you. They need to put in action. They need to adopt the mindset that they are great, that they are beautifully and wonderfully made in your image. And God, we just pray for anybody that maybe is trapped in a bad situation, that you can strengthen them and that peace will come to them and they'll be lifted out of that.